Hi everyone. I hope first and foremost that this video update finds you well, finds you and your family members healthy. The world obviously has been sort of turned upside down with the coronavirus outbreak, and our class is not immune to the changes here. Um, I said in an email a couple of weeks ago that I was going to make some updates to the syllabus. And so what I've done here, that's this document, these updates. So what I've done is this is available to you on Moodle. So um, this will uh, this will replace sort of the last couple of weeks of the course schedule in the current syllabus. So since spring break was um, sort of scheduled out another week. What I did is sort of combine what would have been week 11 with week 12, and then sort of split week 12 into two here. I have changed around. I've actually removed a bunch of the readings here. And so what I'm trying to do is make sure the time that you're spending on the reading for this class is sort of focused and kind of efficient. So go with the reading off of this updated schedule here. Um, what it looks like really is we've got sort of 3 weeks of new material left, and then we've got about a week, or really a week 15 for you to um, uh, take care of a couple of the final assignments here that I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about. Really, there are, it looks like about 3 assignments left. The policy analysis paper, that can be due the end of week 14, which would be April 19th. And then the 2 assignments that would be due in week 15 is the policy action and reflection assignment and the presentation. Um, so we're going to talk about. I've got a couple of PowerPoint slides. I'll switch over to that in a second, and we'll talk about the policy analysis paper. Um, I have a video for you next week talking about the policy action and reflection, and I just put a few notes down here. The so in an ideal world, the thing that we would have done is either attend a meeting of stakeholders, or maybe even a meet, schedule a meeting with a policymaker to advocate for some kind of policy. Obviously, with coronavirus going on, something like that's not going to happen. So what I'm going to recommend is that you compose a letter to the editor of a local newspaper. I have a video that I'll put in week 13. This shouldn't be a particularly big lift. These are 50 to 75, maybe 100 words. They're very focused. Um, and I'll cover all that in the video. Actually, it's not a big deal to me if you don't submit the letter to a newspaper. You could just submit it to me and then compose a one-page reflection on sort of the challenges and rewards of advocacy and how it sort of fits um, to your thinking about social work and your thinking about clinical practice and things like that. I do not yet know if we will be meeting on April 25th. I am waiting for some guidance from CUCA, and I suspect CUCA is waiting for guidance from um, state and local and federal government. So once that is once there's some sort of clarification, which will be coming in the next couple of weeks, I will let you know. I will try and make a decision around the middle of April, like April 15th or so that you have plenty of notice. If we have to cancel that April 25th meeting, what we will do, we have two. I can't see my fingers here. We have two options for presentations. Option number one, you could do a voiceover PowerPoint, email that to me. I'll watch it, give you a grade. You just sort of record the presentation and send it to me. Option number two would be for you to send me just your PowerPoint slides, and then we arrange a time to talk on the phone. And you would give me your presentation over the phone, just sort of tell me when to advance slides, that kind of thing. So put the presentation sort of on your list of things to do after you get the paper done. The presentation should be sort of the key points from your paper, 8 to 10 minutes in length. And like I said, I'll switch over to the content of the paper here in a second. I think that's everything. Like I said, trying to make your time as focused as possible and as efficient as possible. I am happy to read through a draft of anything that you want to send me beforehand. We've got plenty of time before that would be due. Just let me know. We do have a little bit of flexibility with due dates. For instance, I'm willing to push the due date for the policy analysis paper back a couple of days if that would be useful. I'm not sure what your due dates are for other classes. The latest it looks like I'm going to be able to accept assignments is going to be April 30th. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that we do have a little bit of flexibility, but not a ton. And certainly if it looks like I have some more flexibility as sort of clarification comes from QCA about different things, if we have more flexibility, I will let you know. I think the important thing is the important thing I want to convey in this quick update is that I still want everyone to finish the semester successfully. I will do absolutely everything I can to help you finish the semester successfully. I know it's been tough for lots of reasons, and the coronavirus has only compounded the challenges of graduate school and coursework and all that kind of stuff. So please let me know what I can do to be useful. So I think I've covered everything sort of update-wise. Let me pause the video real quick, and I'm going to switch over to the PowerPoint slides. We'll spend just a couple of minutes talking about the policy analysis paper. All right, so I put together just a couple of slides to help facilitate a conversation about the policy analysis paper. I'll put these on Moodle too, so you can see them. I know in the syllabus, I think it says, what does it say, 15 to 22 pages originally. I know in our, was it our February meeting, we shortened that down to 12 to 15, whenever it was. I know we shortened it. At any rate, I'm okay with shortening it even further. I think a high quality 10 pages would be fine. I do not think you need to be overly concerned with the length of the paper. Focus on quality and focus on submitting sort of a high quality paper. If your writing is sort of a little bit wordier, and you tend to compose longer sentences, and you go over 10 pages, you go over 12 pages, you go over 15 pages, that's perfectly fine. What I want you to do is hand in something that you're pleased with. The description of the paper in each of the sections in the syllabus is pretty thorough. I'll talk about each of these here in a second just to give you an idea, but make sure that you've addressed sort of all 6 of these sections in the syllabus. So in the purpose and focus section, what you're talking about is what problem the policy is trying to address. What's the scope of that problem? How many people does that problem affect? What kinds of groups of people does that problem affect? When did this problem first start to become a problem? That kind of thing. And then you want to talk about how the policy addresses the problem. Does it provide money to people in the case of, say, something like food stamps or WIC or unemployment insurance? That puts money literally sort of in people's hands. Does it set up a program or a service? Does it provide money to a service or an agency or something like that? So there's lots of sort of mechanisms by which policies solve problems. And then the other thing you should be addressing here is who's supposed to benefit from the policy, what kinds of social values are advanced by the policy, and make sure you're spending at least a few minutes talking about sort of the manifest and latent goals addressed by the policy. let me just advance the slide here. So the next section is the legislative history. So what events from the history of our country made it clear the policy was necessary? One example I can give you that. So the GI Bill, for example, the the GI Bill provided sort of housing and made mortgages more available for GIs returning from World War II. So the historical event or series of events really that made that policy necessary was World War II and the massive sort of mobilization of human capital needed to emerge successfully from that war. The other thing you should be talking about is the legislative history. So who initiated the legislation, who sponsored it, when was it passed, which executive or governor, depending on uh, whether you're doing a state or federal policy, who signed it into law, and then why did people or political parties, why do they support or oppose the policy? So what about it? What about the policy upset them or excited them? The impacts and costs, this is sort of I think the heart of the paper in a lot of ways. So this is where you're talking about what changed as a result of the policy, or what good did it do? Um, and then you're also talking about sort of what did it cost in order to achieve those results. Now, policies don't always sort of do all of the good that they are intended to do. In fact, we've seen that sort of recently in the relief checks that Congress was talking about sending to the American people. So they settled on sending $1,200 to, it looks like, most Americans. But there was a point a few weeks ago, maybe 10 or 12 days ago, when they were talking about sending as much as $2,000 or as little as $1,000. So $1,200 is sort of a compromise. It's clearly a compromise, kind of on the low end. But think about how the analogy here is to think about how much more beneficial $2,000 would have been. Maybe it would, how much more good could that have done had people gotten that extra $800, versus what's going to be able to happen now that people are getting 1,200. It's still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. It's still going to do a lot of good for a lot of people, especially people who have been impacted by the recent severity of the economic downturn. So then the other questions you're asking: what did it cost to achieve these results? Who benefited? Who harmed? And then make sure you're talking about which of the manifest and latent goals were actually advanced. So there's idealized goals that are sort of set out at the time the policy is enacted and talked about and works its way through its legislative process. And then there's manifest and latent goals that are sort of advanced. Next section is strengths and weaknesses. This is sort of a summary of the things, sort of, the impacts and costs. So what does it do well? Where did it fail? Where did it not go far enough? In this section, make sure you're talking about values or ideals that were advanced or compromised as a result of the policy. By the way, I know I've been talking about social values. I've mentioned them a few times here. I've got a slide coming up on just a second to help clarify. The last two sections here are recommendations and proposed changes. Actually, I should have said that the other way. Proposed changes comes first, and then recommendations is last. So the order that they're listed here in the slides is correct. So in the proposed changes section, you're talking about what revisions have been made or proposed, and then what's the consequence of those revisions. Did those revisions strengthen the policy? Did they weaken it? Or did they have absolutely no effect on the policy and its goals? And then lastly, let me just put myself up here real quick. You're talking about recommendations, and this is the part where you get to rely on your expertise. Tell me what changes need to be made, and tell me why they need to be made. Important questions to answer in this section are, do the changes you recommend advance an ideology or value? Do they help to enhance a policy's effectiveness? And then I'm asking you to justify um, uh, the changes. Do they increase the cost? Do they decrease the cost? And how do you justify that? Um, for example, if we could, this would be hard to do, but if we could reduce the cost and increase the effectiveness of a policy, that's really easy to justify. Um, Increasing the cost and increasing the effectiveness is a little bit more difficult to justify, but maybe the increased cost is worth the increase in the effectiveness. Um, by the same token, sometimes it's worth decreasing the costs of some policies because they're simply not that effective, or they're very limited in their effectiveness. So, tell me what your recommendations are here in this last section. Now, as I said a second ago, I've referenced the social values a couple of times. Um, Social values. Well, so let me say that again. Um, Way back in January, when we had our first face-to-face session, we talked about some political values that sort of each party is interested in, and this is sort of bringing that idea sort of full circle. So policies reflect our social values, right? So I referenced the GI Bill here a few minutes ago. The GI Bill, since it provided access to education and training and housing and things like that for returning service members, the value in there was sort of gratitude. It was nationalism, right? It was material comfort. It allowed people to sort of transition out of military life and into kind of civilian life. So it was, in a sense, the country saying thank you and let us help you. Let us help the veterans transition out of military life into civilian life. Um, Lots of other, well, every other policy also contains or is built on a foundation of social values. And this, I think, is one of the most interesting parts of the study of social policy. Um, the I mentioned a second ago the stimulus package that Congress recently passed that's going to provide a $1,200 check to most Americans. That also contained huge bailouts for large corporations and industry, and those bailouts are far in excess of the sort of equivalent of $1,200 that most Americans are getting. So the value in there is that we're valuing business and enterprise in these corporations more than we're valuing sort of individual workers, and this is the reason why a lot of people are critical of this huge bailout. Is the values are sort of misaligned there. I'm sort of doing this with my hands off camera here. So at any rate, so give some thought to the values that are sort of embedded in the social policy, and make that a part of your discussion. So as always, I'll end this video here. I didn't quite mean to make it so long. But if you have any questions about the paper, the assignment, anything else going on in class, or if there's anything I can do to be useful, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thanks for watching. We'll talk soon.